Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to episode 5 of TED Talks. Here with Andy.
Morning, everyone. Bank holiday Monday.
It's been a few weeks since the last podcast. Just both had very busy schedules. Obviously, we both work full-time jobs. Andy's been away on a holographic kinetics course, and also he has been at like a festival, a mind, body, and spirit festival, also demonstrating HK and the benefits that it can do.
Yeah.
It can help us. So yeah, today's been the first day that we've actually been able to get back together and get another episode in. So we can dive into that if you like. You can explain a bit of what you've been up to.
Yeah. Again, apologies for the lateness of this next podcast. It's been a bit of a whirlwind of a time recently. The other thing was, of course, we finished on the last podcast talking about evolution and creationism versus Big Bang, so to speak. And there was going to need to be a little bit of research and making some notes from this book, The Evolution Cruncher, which I haven't really managed to do. So I was putting it off so that I could do that. I've had a little look going over what I've already read.
Just to refresh the mind.
Yeah, and it's just, there's so much in that book. Is where do you start?
Yeah.
So I have marked a few bits in there, which I will just sort of read from
Yeah.
a little bit, just to give people an idea. But ultimately, why am I doing that? Why am I reading from a book? Why am I going to talk about these things? Because we're in a situation of whether people believe in a creator or whether they believe things are just a random accident.
Yeah.
And it's a big one. It's so big that it can't be ignored, and we just let it go by. That's why this podcast has taken a while to come by, and it's a shame that I haven't had the time to make more notes on it and share what I found from the book. But the reason why it's so big is because if we believe, which is the case en masse, that we are just random bits of meat and flesh spinning around at 666,000 miles an hour, hurtling through space with no direction, and everything's just random, then it has such a massive play on the subconscious. It cannot really be stipulated enough the effect it has. Whereas previous generations and all indigenous cultures who live in nature, with nature, they are aware that they have a symbiotic relationship with nature.
Yeah.
That, and the Australian Aborigines, 60,000 years of culture and experience on this planet, and this is where holographic kinetics come from, that knowledge of universal law dovetailing with quantum physics that Steve Richards researched and saw the dovetailing of them and brought them two together for the Western mind to understand and be able to use and utilize for the benefit of the spirit and us as human beings. They knew inherently that everything in nature was alive, and therefore they could live in the harshest environments in the world and still survive. But not even survive, thrive. It wasn't like you could imagine people from a Western world going out into any environment in nature. How long would they last? Okay, you've got your people who have done military service and people who've done survival research and experience and practice. They'd survive, but the vast majority,
everyday person,
wouldn't have a clue. And that's crazy, really, when you think about it.
It is, when you think how connected, depending on which way you look at history, but when you think how connected we were, if you believe in the caveman, we came from that, what they tell us, to now everything's just on a little tablet or a little phone in our hands, and we can have everything within hours, as opposed to having to go out and build a shelter in terms of out of what's there and then
Well, we could go on a massive tangent just on that alone,
Yeah.
because, again, absolutely categorically proved that previous civilizations, going back thousands of years, had our technology that we have today and more.
Yeah.
Because there's no way some of these monuments and buildings and these places could have been built.
Yeah. That's what we spoke about last time
with
as well,
horse and cart. There's no way.
Yeah.
And you've got the depictions on the walls, carved into the walls, and the stone engravings. So really, it's that cognitive dissonance again. If you're refusing to even question that.
Yeah. Open the mind towards that way of thinking. Yeah.
There's got to be that question raised. Well, yeah, actually, and again, as I've said before in previous podcasts, just set your mind on it for a minute.
Yeah.
How did they manage to produce these things? How did they live like this and build these architectural
masterpieces?
Yeah, and just unbelievable. So
it's quite fitting time-wise as well, because at the moment I'm seeing a big on socials, a big question into the pyramids. There's been a big, the last few months, well, people breaking down the maths like we spoke about in the last podcast.
Yeah.
So it's kind of timing that we're going to go into this subject. Hopefully it can filter its way through and people can find it.
Well, interestingly, we watched a film last night when we came home after a really busy month. We came home last night from this Mind, Body, Spirit festival where we had the holographic kinetics table set up, and we're promoting that and doing treatments on people. And we watched a film from 1995 called The Prophecy.
Okay.
Now,
I haven't seen it.
As people who have been asking questions for a while, you get truth drops in certain films. And you're just like, again, to the normal person who's not really looked into anything, they just accept their everyday reality and don't question what's going on any deeper than the surface level, other than, why are they doing that's rubbish? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, politicians are corrupt, etc., etc. Anyone who's scratched past the surface will see, oh my goodness, I was looking at that, and now they're putting it in a film. But they put it in films as a way of, it's just fiction. But they're putting it out there to you. They're letting you know. So the truth is out there, and they will tell you certain truths. But it's a bit like, this was a great analogy from David Icke, I think, a 10,000 piece jigsaw puzzle. Okay, they'll put little pieces together for you in random areas.
Yeah.
And then they'll give you the pieces of the puzzle, but they'll mix it in with a million other pieces.
Yeah.
So this is where you cannot use your brain to logically figure out everything. Well, you can, but that's going to take a lifetime.
Yeah, it takes
and
years.
you'll find the dots do join. You'll find there are patterns, and oh my god, that is and be really surprised at what you find. But the only true way to get that puzzle put together very quickly is with your intuition, with your spirit. And that doesn't come overnight. That comes through a long, arduous journey of
tuning into yourself, really.
Yeah, well, through experience, and those experiences tend to come hardest and fastest with what people term as the dark night of the soul. It's through having tough experiences, having tough lessons, and then saying, "Oh my goodness, I can see how that works." So it's really the study of self, which I will go into later on in the podcast as well, from a leading physicist in the world. So going back to the whole scenario of evolution, etc., I'll read that first snippet from this book. Okay, this is the Evolution Cruncher.
Show how thick that book is, Andrew, so people can.
That's how thick the book is. All right, I'm sure it's over 600 pages long.
Yeah, that can't be an easy book to get through.
No, I think it's nearly 900 pages long, actually. And literally, I'm probably about halfway through, and there's so many dog ears in this which are highlighting. But I could have dog-eared every page almost. Do you know what I mean? First of all, this is the evolutionary formula for making a universe, all right, from the evolutionists.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing plus nothing equals 2 elements. Plus time equals 92 natural elements. Plus time equals all physical laws and a completely structured universe of galaxies, systems, stars, planets, and moons orbiting in perfect balance and order. That's number one. Number two, this is the evolutionary formula for making life. Dirt and water plus time equals living creatures. Now, that statement, dirt and water plus time equals living creatures, anyone who is a believer in evolution and randomness without having done any study of it will say you're talking absolute crap. Do you know what I mean? That's not how it worked. It happened by this crawling out of the sea, etc., etc. Creatures crawling out of the sea onto land. Water is the necessity for life on a planet. This is the actual evolutionary's law of how it works.
Yep.
Nothing plus nothing equals 2 elements, and those 2 elements being dirt and bacteria with your water basically created life.
And time.
Of course, and time. And so the evolutionists will say
over thousands
over
of years.
Millions of years this is, but you still got to create life from dirt and bacteria.
Yeah.
It's still got to happen, however long the time is. So scientists, again, that is mentioned in this book, have over centuries tried manipulating dirt and bacteria in the lab in ways which actually speed up the process. They have found ways of speeding up this process, basically using radiation. Oh, it's all coming back in. I haven't lost it. Using radiation, because basic radiation will speed up any mutations. They've tried all of this, and yet they've never been able to achieve it.
Yeah.
Not even one little bit.
But that would straight away disprove that theory, because you're adding another element into the
radiation. But radiation is a natural occurrence as well, especially around like volcanoes and stuff like that. You will get a radiation build-ups, and radiation can be natural. But what they've done in a lab is they've been able to manipulate it and manufacture it so it's much faster. So that ties into the neo-Darwinism theories of mutation, the mutation of genes, etc., which happens through radiation. But again, there's pages in that book that absolutely nail it down from the scientific perspective. This isn't from some philosophy. All right, this is from absolutely nailed down scientists. Okay, top of their leagues, across all countries, across all eras. Okay, that mutational development through radiation creates that evolution, creates that life. Well, any study of that mutation through radiation has only produced one thing: a weakening of that species, of that gene. It's never made it stronger. So we can fast forward immediately, and this is a big leap, but the stages are all there, and it's in that book. The combination of the donkey and the horse, they can procreate together, which create a subspecies known as a mule. Okay. So in a way, you could consider that as an evolution, right, between 2 different species, even though the mule is still a subspecies of both. But this whole thing about species being born from other bits of bacteria, etc., and that evolution period over time, millions of years, never been able to be replicated. But the mule is a good example of 2 species come together and something evolve and being the mule. But guess what? The mule is impotent. It's not able to procreate with anything else, even with its own. Okay, so
why is that?
because the mixing of those two genes,
Yep.
those two species,
Yep.
yeah, you can create something, but that basically you're depleting the genes.
The purity of the genes from
Yeah.
the parent, so to speak. Yeah.
So you just think about that in and of its own.
Yeah, my mind's gone a million miles an hour now.
Yeah, that in and of its own is the standard.
Mm-hmm.
Any mutation of genes and species, etc., always ends up depleting the genomes, the DNA, etc., etc.
Yeah, and over time, if you kept repeating that, obviously, then you'd have like a lot smaller trace, so to speak, of the founding parents, or
Indeed, but you're not going to be able to reproduce that over time and time because it can't reproduce.
Yeah.
It's impossible for it to reproduce. That's the one thing. So again, in a way, that's a safety valve of nature that scientists, etc., cannot manipulate nature to the way they want it to be. You can only, to make it stronger, you can only actually weaken it. So nature is perfect. This is why
go on.
We bring back this film that I watched yesterday, Prophecy, and the little truth drops. Okay, I've gone full circle. I've gone off on 15 different tangents and come back. What a surprise. But at least I've come back and remembered. So this film, The Prophecy, little truth drop.
Yep.
If you want the truth for the mathematics is the key to the universe.
Yeah.
So
as we've mentioned a lot of different times in different avenues.
As we've said this before, and this was in the film, was the angel Gabriel that said that in this film. Just one liner, just dropped it in there. And as I've mentioned here before, on the previous podcast, the YouTuber Archaix, ARCHAIX, has proven this mathematical construct. That this is a construct. So, because the mathematics is perfect, and you can see that in nature, you can see that in the history of the Earth and all of the elements that have taken place throughout history, with the catastrophes that have taken place, etc. So he's proven that, and he's put it out there, and he's had every Tom, Dick, and Harry tried to prove him wrong, and no one has been able to. Yeah. Because you can't lie with maths.
No, this ties into what I learned from an economic standpoint of the Fibonacci sequence, the golden ratio. Is that was all based on nature, and our whole system has been built off of nature. Which would, in my head, it links the two together and says, well, of course, maths is perfect because maths was built off of nature. Now, obviously, we can go deeper into that, but again, another tangent.
But again, it ties in. So if anything's from Jason himself, if something's true somewhere, then it will be true everywhere. You'll see that truth in multiple different. Whereas, random philosophy and sort of ideas, philosophical ideas, etc., it's all well and good to postulate and think about them, but unless you're going to have these constants,
from every different
angle, then
they can be debunked, can't they? Almost, and
and everything I speak about on here, you can see from every different angle these truths, and that's through years and years of study. Mainly, well, it's not mainly, I would say half and half of information that is out there that has been put out there over the centuries, over the millennia, alongside investigation and that of self. And the two again marry up. So I've said previously in previous podcasts that I don't want to make this about me and talk about my stuff, which is why really I haven't done a podcast prior to now. People have said, I should be talking or writing this stuff down decades ago, which I always thought about doing, but I never did because I thought, it's all a bit egotistic, really. I spoke to someone. Who did I speak to? On Wednesday night. So to give you all another little feel of the real world I live in. So you might think, oh, new people come, he talks crazy shit. Do you know what I mean? It's like, for people who haven't ever come across this information before,
Yeah, they
just
think
think
it's
of,
crazy,
it's just
bit wild.
completely out there.
Yeah.
You've got some crazy theories and all the rest of it. I'm not living in a separate reality as such. I still live in this real world with everyone else. I still do real world things. So, give you a good example of that. Wednesday night, I was out at a jungle and drum and bass do.
Okay.
Thanks to my good wife signing up for those tickets, which I was like, oh, not Friday, no, sorry, that was Thursday night, which was a great do. Respect to Boo for putting on his Wrecked Promotions, putting on that do, because it was a really good vibe, really good atmosphere. The MC, Black Eye from London, held the crowd down, played the crowd brilliantly. But it was a good night, it was a good atmosphere. Friday night was a surprise 50th down at the Steamboat Tavern in Ipswich. Saturday was a HK client here. Sunday was doing the Mind, Body, Spirit Expo. And in between that, I've been working, doing painting and decorating. I've been reading books like this. I've been on my allotment, and I've been, working in the house, running a family home with my wife and children. It's every aspect of life all being dealt with in level-headed, grounded ways.
Yep.
Just because I'm reading information that is out there doesn't mean I'm some kind of space cadet. Far from it. Do you know what I mean?
Still living life normally.
I live in the real
Just
world.
a bit more tuned in. That's
Well,
what I kind of call it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's just been the natural way to go. So recently, when I said that I didn't really want to be talking about myself, worry about yourself, all right?
I've been saying that all week, by the way. Out of nowhere, just someone says something, I'm like, worry about yourself.
Shout out to Matt of Quantum of Conscience. He's been really ill recently, but he is better now. He nearly died, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I haven't checked him out in a while.
He poisoned himself with carbon monoxide with his stove.
Okay.
Bloody hell, man! It sounded like it was a close one, but he's out of the woods, so good for him. My UK tutor in holographic kinetics said to me when I saw her before the course, you should talk more about yourself and your experiences. And I'm like, I've just been saying that I don't want to talk about myself. And she said, yeah, but people can then relate to that. Yeah. They can see that you're not just talking from a book. Yeah. It is from experiences. And I was like, yeah, okay. So we think ego is just about being a big ego and, it's all inflated ego and it has to be a positive. But ego can be a negative thing as well.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be positive. And it's not just one ego. We've done tests in holographic kinetics where you're having direct communication with spirit through the arm testing, which is, spirit hold firm for yes, let go for no. And it's an energy test, not a muscle test.
Yep.
And it's real and it works. Otherwise, we would not get the results in holographic kinetics that we get. Okay, so we have found that you can have multiple egos, but all within their separate dimensions of themselves.
Okay.
So
that makes sense to me.
And not all of them are active. So you can say, okay, how many egos have we got? 30 different egos.
Yeah.
Which kind of like, how many of them are active? Oh, 7. Okay. The ego itself, I'd love to talk about the ego as a separate entity at some point on this podcast.
Because, we can go into that.
Oh my goodness.
That'd be very interesting for me as well.
It's absolutely fascinating how the ego entity works. I've had a snippet of it through working in HK. Part of the course is that we do work on the priority ego entity that's affecting the running of the vehicle. And some of the experiences I've had with that, working with people, observing the table and overseeing the table, has been, these are the moments that I call groundbreaking for me, going to the next level of understanding what we are and how we work within this construction. Mind-blowing, really. So, with that being said, I will bring in aspects of my story and my experience. In actual fact, I'll be doing a podcast with a lady called Althea, who I met very synchronistically recently, doing that on the 30th, I think. And I think her podcast is called the pain free method.
Yeah.
She's devised a way of being able to be pain free through just using your own mind and spirit, I guess. I haven't looked into it, but she wants to do a podcast with me on holographic kinetics.
What we can speak to her, you can speak to her, and we can see if we can take the podcast that you guys do on her channel and post it on this channel as well.
Or
we can link it at the bottom of the next one or something, to tie them both in together.
Okay, so in that one, she said, so maybe speak about your early life and how you got into this. And I was like, man, I could go on for an hour just talking about my life, my experiences that brought me to where I am today. But I will go into information on there that I haven't said on here and I haven't shared publicly ever, really.
Yeah.
Maybe just within the confines of the holographic kinetics classroom for people to help them on their journey and understanding what everything's about. But it has been a journey. So where do we go from here in this podcast?
Let's touch back into evolution.
The evolution book.
Yeah, and let's go from... So we kind of went on a tangent after we spoke about how the scientists have tried to replicate their theory, so to speak, and how they can't.
Yeah.
And then we went into like it's a mathematical construct.
Yeah. Well, what I will do before I go into anything in this book is just share with you guys. I was listening to a podcast during the week. It came up on the YouTube feed, and I was just like, I was working, and I was like, again, it's just one of those moments where intuitively my thought goes there.
Yeah.
Oh, I need to listen to that.
I'll listen to this one, yeah.
And I know that's my intuition, that's my spirit saying, there's information in this. Okay, and it's from one of the top physicists in the world.
Okay.
Cannot remember for the life of me what the podcast was called, but it was basically about consciousness. He was being interviewed. The name of the top physicist is Federico Fagin, spelled Federico, Federico, Fagin, Faggin. Now, when I say he's a top physicist, okay, this is coming from someone who was the inventor of the microprocessor, and the inventor of the touchscreen. I did write it down. Thank God for that.
Yeah.
Nature of Reality. Federico Fagin. And there was so much information in there, but I'm working, so I only made a couple of notes as I was going. But this is a guy who has absolutely proven that through science you can create this and you can create that. So he's very much obviously a scientific mind to be the inventor of these things.
Yep.
Right? But on his journey he realised that the brain and the mind was more than that.
Okay.
And that was through a personal experience.
Okay.
Now, his personal experience was basically an out-of-body experience, or a type of out-of-body experience, and which is what happened with me. I was already fairly much down the rabbit hole anyway, but so his came out of nowhere, and he was like, what the hell is going on here? So that changed his whole idea and perspective of what he is, what reality is. So having the scientific mind that he's got, he then went into the scientific research of what he experienced.
Yeah. Try to understand it from a
because he needed to understand it.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is where you get the bridge between science and nature with
spirituality.
It's there.
Yeah.
So anyone listen to this saying, it's random philosophical mumbo jumbo. This is a guy, if you have any interest whatsoever, this is the guy that you need to have a listen to.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
But as I've said to you before on this podcast, if you're interested and you see, okay, there is something more to this, and you want to leapfrog 5, 10, 15 years of research to try and prove it to yourself. If you want to take that leap of faith, you've just got to make that communication with your spirit. Okay, spirit, I'm taking a leap of faith here that I am a spiritual being.
Mm-hmm.
Show me.
Show me the way, yeah.
Give me some examples, or show to me that I'm a spiritual being. And then the importance is that you start being aware of what's going on around you. Start looking for this. And I can assure you, your spirit will give you those clues.
Yeah, you have to
it will happen.
You have, for me, really tune in, because you can go about your daily life so easy and just
miss it all.
Yeah. So you really have to almost pull yourself back and stop and just pay attention to the subtle little things that come into your mind, your thoughts, your gut feelings, those sort of things.
Yeah, and it can be very subtle.
Yeah, really.
But it's called, the main key is called awareness. Just having awareness of, okay, let's see what takes place. You can't necessarily say, okay, I want you to prove that this is all reality by making that bottle over there
fall off the table or something,
or levitate.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's crazy, because you don't really believe it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about, okay, taking that leap of faith to, okay, spirit, you show me. And then you can leapfrog 5, 10, 15 years of research and have spirit prove to you, and then you can start following your intuition. Okay, spirit, thank you very much. What else is there? Okay, I'm really interested in this particular subject. What is it about that? And then just having that awareness, and things will happen, because experience is more important than research. And then that's basically you getting in tune with your spirit, you getting in tune with nature. So being out in nature, which I don't do nowhere near enough. So mine is very much an intuition living in an urban society. I don't go walking in the woods and sit in fields and meditate or anything like that. I ain't got the time to.
Same.
Do you know what I mean? But I have learned to have this acute awareness of what's going on and picking up, because then synchronicity starts. You think, well, what are the chances of that happening? Do you know what I mean? Coincidence and synchronicity, synchronicity is a next level up from coincidence.
I find it with like you said with the podcast earlier, where she's at work, the things, when you ask to be on, what you've just said, a book will appear in front of you, or a podcast will appear in front of you, or something will catch your attention in a way that if you pay attention, that's your intuition saying, right, read this, watch this. This is the next step for you to take, and listen.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Yeah.
So I'm just going to read one of his quotes for Federico Fagan, the physicist. You'll never arrive at the truth with what you assume to be true, which is the postulate that you start with anyway. All right?
Okay.
So that's one. What he's realised over from a scientific perspective, okay, about what he is, what we are, what this place is, the study of consciousness. What is consciousness? So he goes into detail of what consciousness is. Consciousness is outside of the brain. I'm holding up the evolutionary book. That's actually a notebook, so it's coming out of that book. I will just read to you from a guy called Ouspensky. I can't remember what nationality he was, obviously Eastern European. He wrote a book called Tertium Organum. Okay, and that book is heavily scientific. It's too heavy for me.
Okay.
My mind doesn't work like that. I can't really sync with information when it's so heavily scientifically based. I've always been intuitive, empathetic, a feely type person, as opposed to hardcore intellectual stuff. But
I know that feeling.
But I appreciate the intellectual side of things for what it is, that scientific based stuff for what it is, because I get it, but I don't get it on a level where I can then explain it, because I need to break things down in a level that is everyday common language.
Those guys sometimes live in a whole different realm of language and understanding, don't they? So.
Absolutely. So he says, if we consider the brain, this is on page 183 of Tertium Organum, Consciousness is outside of this world. The brain is part of the construct, simulation, simulacrum, matrix, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's Ouspensky. So there's
Yep.
and that's another incredible mind who, from a scientific perspective, completely dovetailed with consciousness and reality and nature.
Mm-hmm.
He saw that, he could
Yep.
basically link the two together.
Ties in, yeah.
Okay, so the study of consciousness, this is from Federico Fagin. The study of consciousness is actually the study of self. Okay, it can't ever be done with a book or a video, etc.
Mm-hmm.
All right, or papers. It's
Mhm.
the study of self, which has been unwittingly my journey into where I am today.
Yeah.
And how I'm at a place I've learnt things that basically mean I've been shown the path through trusting my intuition, knowing, not understanding intellectually what is and what isn't,
Yeah.
just knowing that's the path,
Yeah,
that's
that's
what
the
I
way.
need to look at. So
Mhm.
with holographic kinetics, that was very much the case. I did a 3-year counselling course. After 3 years, as I said before, I realised, oh my God, I'm more messed up than I thought I was.
Yeah.
Just basically using drink,
Mhm.
and, alcohol and weed, more so than other drugs, but weed as a way of coping, as a coping mechanism.
Mhm.
It was on that course, would have been when I was 43 years of age, 42 years of age. I realised that me being the party boy, the lad, the party lad, and all the rest of it was self-medication.
Mhm.
Don't get me wrong, I had a great time. I don't regret any of it, but it was still self-medication.
Yeah.
To get myself out of this feeling of subconsciously of just not feeling a part of
Yeah. Like a purpose or something like that.
purpose as well. There's all sorts of tangents that would
Yeah.
tie into, which maybe I can go into on when I share more of my personal journey over the podcasts. But
Those days aren't out of you yet, though.
well,
Thursday night's jungle.
Thursday night's jungle night. I did have a couple of drinks. I only need a couple of drinks these days.
Yeah.
No, sorry, it wasn't Thursday night. I didn't drink Thursday night, and I didn't drink on Friday night at the surprise party at all. Just water, because I knew I had a big weekend coming up. And the couple of drinks I had at my wife's birthday party last Saturday, just those couple of drinks, and the next day the clear up after the party, 4 hours of clearing up on my hands and knees, scrubbing the new decking I'd laid down to get all these dirty alcohol-soaked footprints out of it, etc. Was like, that was enough. Saying
Punishment.
knowing I had so much coming up,
Yeah.
was overwhelming in itself.
Mhm.
And so my head was a little bit, I've got to focus. So I didn't drink Thursday or Friday, because I don't need it.
Yeah.
Sometimes now and again, it's nice as a little join in, because what you do find, and again, this really ties in with what I'm saying, you'll notice, and people say this to me who don't drink, when I don't drink, everyone around me gets really annoyed with me and like, are you going to have a drink? Are you going to have a drink? And it's like, why do they do that? I'm all right, I don't need to drink.
Mhm.
But it annoys people who do drink. And that's simply because people who do drink go into a different type of frequency.
Yep.
That frequency of the entity of alcohol. Alcohol is an entity in and of itself.
Yep.
They're all in that same frequency. So they're all vibing together and everything's good.
Yep.
Now, don't get me wrong, you're going to get different attitudes and emotions within that. Some people get happy, some people get aggressive, but it's still part of that same dimension.
Mhm.
Whereas people who don't drink are not in there, and it makes people who don't drink feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I know when I first went through a period of not drinking at all, which was back in the days when I did drink, came back from India in 1999, and part of my journey for my self-healing on the physical side, with a skin issue that really set me on this path from day dot, but sort of 18, 19 years of age. That, going back then, would have been 99. I think I went 6 months without a drink.
Mhm.
And do you know how much that pissed off my dad and my brother? Like, my dad got really pissed off with me because I wasn't drinking. I'm thinking, what the fuck is all that about? It's not affecting you.
No. But people, I think sometimes when I've been in a situation where I've gone out with people drinking and you don't. All of a sudden, you think you're better than them, or it's just because you don't want to drink for whatever reason, you
Yeah.
know. But it's like the separation that they put between you
Yeah.
is on them. It's not on
Yeah. But
you not
again,
drinking, is it?
so your way of understanding it is that they think that you think you're better than them
Yeah.
because you don't need to drink, and they're relying on it. Yes,
I think
and no,
part of it as
but
well is they want to, like you say, when they go into the lower frequency of drinking and
yeah,
them emotions, they're trying to pull you into them emotions as well.
yeah. The only danger with that is we're making an assumption that that's what they think, or
Okay.
they may be making an assumption that that's what
We
we're
think.
thinking.
Yeah.
Either way, it's still an assumption.
Mm-hmm.
What's the word assume stand for? Make an ass out of you and me.
Yeah.
All right. So assumption is always
Never a good thing.
never a good thing. But what is a reality is there's a frequency within that dimension of
Yeah.
drinking. The entity of alcohol is a real thing compared to those that don't. So you're basically in two separate realities within this reality, but you're in two separate realities, and it makes people feel uncomfortable. Whatever their thought process is of me, you, someone else not drinking is down to personal perceptions, but it's a real thing because everyone comments on it to me on people who don't drink. What they say about people around them that like, well, have a drink. Anyway, so this study of self is basically the study of consciousness. And that study involves how to read your experiences.
Okay.
So that's something that I've always done since a childhood. Since my childhood, I would look into why I behaved in this particular way, why I behaved in that particular way. I think one of the earliest ones I remember, and this would have been when I was at primary school, and this ties in with an understanding of universal law of holographic kinetics as a 7-year-old, shall we say. And that was, I knew at that young age that my anger was cyclical. Okay. Now, this is hardcore, heavy-duty stuff that physicists have studied. That the physicists have studied through years of trying to piece together what's taking place. I instinctively knew as a child.
Yeah.
As children do, but they try and make they have these intuitive feelings, etc. But trying to fit that into the modern world of, I mean, even more so now with the technology just taking over and people just being completely absorbed in the technology. But children are inherently quite connected with their spirit, and with nature as such. But we are programmed out of that material, the here and now.
Through the educational system and things like that.
Absolutely, but also the parents have been brought up through that. So then the parents reinforce that.
It gets repeated as well.
Yeah. Again, we go back to what I said earlier of what effect us being programmed to believe we're just random meat and flesh spinning through space at 666,000 miles per hour. Okay, it means you're never trying to make that connection with, well, there's a creator that created this place, and we are at one with nature. That's completely pushed out of the equation.
Yeah, of course.
So it's huge programming. So you can understand why people completely flip it off. Do you know what I mean? Like, what are you talking about? It's complete shit. You've been programmed since you were born.
Yeah, day dot, isn't it?
Yeah. So the study involves how to read your experiences. Okay. So at 7 years of age, I was aware. I had this moment where I flipped out. I was really angry, reacted to whatever, probably one of my siblings. That was basically the trigger for my reactions back then, which was unfair on them. But when you're brought up in an environment where the way to deal with stuff is with a physical reaction, which is what happened with me, upon me, then that's what you've learned. So that's the way you deal with it. So it would be that level of anger would be with a push, with a kick out, or whatever. I always prided myself on the fact that it was never a punch. It'd be a slap, but it would never be a punch. And I wanted to punch.
Yeah.
I was so angry. I wanted to punch, but I never did. There's always something in me, because the punch meant you really want to hurt that person, as opposed to you just want to let out that aggression.
There's a difference there, isn't there?
Yeah, that hugely for me. It was a huge difference. That doesn't mean I look and say, yeah, my behaviour was acceptable, because it still wasn't. But that's children. You grow up and you learn.
Yeah.
But I would always, what I'm saying is, through those childhood experiences, I was always, as he says here, reading my own experiences. Not all the time as a child, because that's part and parcel of, you learn through experience, like, why am I doing that? As that 7-year-old, I realised that when I let that anger out, I then felt calm again.
Yeah.
And it was like, and then it all builds up, and then it has to come out again.
It has to go
and
somewhere.
Then I'm feeling calm. That was an absolute palpable moment in my childhood. Now, from a holographic kinetic perspective, I now understand what's taken place. A holographic kinetics, through the understanding of universal law dovetailing with quantum physics for the Western mind, is we are in a continual state of action, the anger, and reaction, and everything in between. So when it stops in the middle, that's 0 point. So at some point in that moment, there'll be a 0 point where you're calm. Okay, and then, so breaking it back down into holographic kinetics language, based on science and quantum physics, energy is free flowing. All right. What happens is, when we're in a situation where we react, let's just say you've been told off, you've been hit by your parents, okay? When you're being told off, and that comes with the hit, it was never the hit that hurt. It was the emotional, like, why? I haven't done anything wrong. Why am I getting told off for? Do you know what I mean? That was where the pain was, the emotional side of, but why? You know, there's two people involved in this situation. Why am I the one that's getting the? And that's because I put my head above the pulpit all the time, which I later went on to learn from good old Super Nanny. Bad attention is better than no attention at all. All right. So that's subconsciously. So you've got this situation of this energy pendulum. Okay, when energy is free flowing, it's free flowing. When you're told off, for example, and you're disciplined, you want to externalize and say, I didn't, why are you telling me? And remember, this can happen at pre-verbal. I'm not saying it did, but I'm saying it can happen at pre-verbal. It doesn't even have to involve any physical discipline. It can just be the telling off. I remember I told my daughter off one time. It's the first time I'd really told her off, like I've told my boys off. Now, I could shout at my boys if they'd done something wrong, and they'd be like, okay. The reaction it had on my daughter when I told her, you've been a naughty girl, was like her world had ended. Oh my goodness, the difference was just, and she didn't say anything. So in that moment, that free flow of energy that she was living in would have been trapped and locked in her cells. Okay, so within our cell, our bodies are a holographic reflection. That can be proved through the scientists and Mandelbrot set and all the rest of it. That this is why you've got acupuncturists that can treat your whole body through working on your feet. The guys that work on the ears, I met someone at the weekend who used to be, I can't remember what they're called, audical, where each aspect of the ear, each particular point in the ear, is a reflection of the whole. They can treat people on the whole body. The same with iridologists, who can tell what's wrong with you through looking at your eyes. Your eyes will give you the complete picture of your whole body. So if these things are real and there's people out there that fix people with these, then everything is a hologram of itself. So when I say that, when the free flow of energy gets trapped, it can be in that moment where, if Erin had turned around and said, no, not a naughty girl, oh, sorry, I made that mistake and I did that, but it was just me You don't do that. You don't do that as a
Of course.
child.
No, yeah.
You internalize it. And the moment you internalize it, it becomes trapped energy within the cells of your body.
Mm-hmm.
So which then will go on to be disease,
Yep.
dis-ease. It's that free flow of energy, and that can then be manifested. I'll have a great one to share with Althea on the 30th, because she said to me, if you can give me any examples of holographic kinetics working with physical issues,
Mm-hmm.
then let me know. And I'm like, well, I have done stuff. I've done surrogacy sort of stuff, and I know at expos we've done stuff, and people have come back and said, I've had this injury for years. You just gave me this treatment for an emotional issue that I have.
Yep.
And my ankle's better.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not limping for the first time in years. It doesn't hurt when I'm walking. So we see that all the time. But I'm thinking, what really good one can I say? I might have a word with Sally during the week and say, can you remember any really powerful ones? Because I could bring some surrogate ones. I was involved in surrogacy.
Yep.
Okay, where I was a surrogate, Sally was a practitioner. We surrogated someone else's spirit into me. I spoke through their spirit outside of like what the issue was and what was going on,
mm-hmm.
and we've had huge changes.
Yep. That's going to be one to blow their minds.
Oh, indeed, it sounds.
Blew my mind when you told me about that.
It does sound crazy, but it's not random. It's not happened once. It's happened loads of times. But I've got a good one of my own to share with Althea on the 30th, which has been very recent.
Okay.
So when that energy becomes trapped in the cell,
mm-hmm.
it then goes from being free-flowing energy to potential energy.
Yeah.
And that potential energy swings between action and reaction. Okay. Now, it's only with HK, I apologise if people have heard this before on previous podcasts, but you know what? I'm going to share it regular because it's so important.
Yeah.
All right. Only your spirit knows how, where, why, and when something was created. And as the creator of that dimension, we'll just say anger, for example, at people who don't indicate.
Mm-hmm.
Barry Brunning, how you doing, bro? How does that manifest, okay, for that person?
Yep.
All right. So when we're in this action and reaction pendulum, okay, it will only be working. The action takes place with the reaction. Only your spirit knows how, why, and when, where this was created.
Yep.
As the creator of that dimension, only the creator can actually completely clear that.
Yeah.
And with HK, what you do is you clear that old dimension, okay,
mm-hmm.
and then create a new one, because that moment in time has to be replaced.
Yeah.
So again,
that's where I say, when I mentioned before in the podcast about time travel.
Yeah.
Because you're effectively going back and changing
the
past, if you believe that time is linear.
Yeah.
You're changing what happened in that moment to clear that blockage.
Yeah.
So that you can, like you say, create the new pathway of how you would have liked that situation to have turned out, as opposed to it.
But we are living in 7 dimensions of time.
Yeah.
Okay. In any one moment. Okay. 7 dimensions. So you look at the rainbow, for example. There are 7 colours of the rainbow.
I think so.
I think so as well.
I tuned out when all the flags started coming everywhere.
So you've got the ultraviolet side, and you've got the infrared side.
Yep.
The infrared side being the spiritual side, the ultraviolet side being the interdimensional side,
light information
as such. But what you've got is the present.
Mm-hmm.
On your spiritual side, you've got the present, the past. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's get this right. You got the present, the past, the past, future.
Okay.
Okay, and then you've got the past. The present, the past, and the future.
Okay.
Okay.
This is going to be a big tangent. I can feel it.
Well, it won't be, because I won't go into too much detail of it now. But when you're making changes in holographic kinetics, you're changing the past, future, which will reoccur because you're on this cycle of this time loop.
Yep.
Take my anger, for example. It had to be fed.
Mm-hmm.
It was on this time loop. I was stuck in time with this anger.
Mm-hmm.
So action, reaction. The reaction would take place with the action, and then it would calm down.
Yeah.
And then that time loop would come around. It might be a day. I'm sure it wasn't. I'm sure I worked out it was, maybe a week or 10 days. But it doesn't have to be meticulously the same. It can be, change because circumstances will dictate.
Yeah.
But that time would come round again. So it was this continual loop. And the same could be said. I saw someone at the weekend who had a sex addiction. It was compulsive. He couldn't stop it. He just had to go out and sleep with other women.
Right.
And he wanted to stop. He'd been on a 4-year, like AA 12-step program, but for sex addiction.
Yep.
4 years. I said, how's that working out for you?
Just give me more people.
So all that's doing, these 12 steps, all it's doing is reinforcing
the cycle that he's in.
Yeah, cycle. It's just reinforcing it. So how are you ever going to get out of it? You might understand it a bit better and understand your cycles, but only your spirit, the creator of these dimensions, has the power to change it and recreate a new path for you. This is why HK works so well.
Yeah.
And is really the most advanced modality out there for anything like this. So I know we're coming up to the top of the hour.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So didn't even really get into this book as well, because it's just so many different tangents you can go off, which are all relevant.
Yeah. Because everything's interconnected, isn't it? So.
Absolutely, everything. Everything is one. Everything is interconnected. So it's really, once you start talking about something, you connect it with this, you connect it with that.
Yeah.
And I can only really go with, if I was to sit here and read this book to you, then you're not really coming from the heart, from your spirit. You're not allowing that free flow of energy. You're like, well, I'm going to read someone else's experience, this scientist. Well, that's all well and good, maybe for people that are on the fence or disbelieving of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not my responsibility to convince you guys.
No.
Either you have an inquisitive mind and you want to know more about the world, the universe, ultimately yourself. Okay. So, really,
I was going to say, wrap it up, and then what we can do is almost a part 2 to this evolution podcast.
Well, it's going to end up being part 999 as we go, because it will all be interconnected anyway. So it's one of the things I realised, for us to make this podcast regularly, if I nail myself down to, well, I'll talk about evolution, then it's like, now I've got to find the time to go through this book, make the notes, and then it won't happen, which is why it's been so long this time around. So everything will free flow into it.
Okay.
And over the course of the next week or two, what I've decided to do is I keep this little notebook with me, because what happens is I have these experiences
then you can
on a daily basis. I jot them down and think, there we go, there's the material, because it's got to be real life things that take place.
Yeah.
Okay, so those guys that are on the fence and like, well, you haven't really convinced me, you haven't read enough from that book to convince me. It's not my responsibility to convince you.
No.
It's not my responsibility to heal that guy who came in on Saturday to clear his sex addiction. It's his responsibility.
Yeah.
The moment he comes through that door, I will facilitate his clearing by working with his spirit.
Yeah. But he's got to want that change.
But he's got to want it.
Of course.
The first thing I did stipulate with him is, are you here because you want to be here?
Yeah.
Or because your partner said, if you don't,
I'm leaving you.
For example, because that's obviously a very real thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, no, I want to. I've been wanting to clear this. And when he said he's been on this 4-year program, you're kind of like, okay, he's coming from the right place.
Yeah.
Everything in the session completely lined up. Starting as a 5-year-old, of course he wasn't having sex at 5-year-old, but that's when the thought process for him of I need attention first took place.
Mm-hmm.
So this is very important for people to realise why this works.
Yeah.
You have to go to the cause of the effect.
Yes.
So the cause was he needed attention. He wanted attention at a young age. Okay, in the school playground with his friends. One of his friends got lots of attention from from their peers for something that he had gone out and done.
Mm-hmm.
a physical manifestation as a 5-year-old. In this case, it was a type of jewelry, and he got all this attention. And this lad sat there, was there, and he was like, he was jealous. He wanted that attention.
Yeah.
That was the start of it. Now, how did we know that it was at 5 years of age? Because of direct communication with spirit through the arm. Yeah. This is why HK is a fast-track method of clearing issues, but also the fast-track method of understanding yourself and leapfrogging.
Yeah, it doesn't take 4 years to understand that, does it?
No, it doesn't take 4 years, and it doesn't take 15 years of reading a book. If you want to evolve and move forward and understand your particular behaviours and want to clear them, even if you don't think, because this is the biggest thing that really does my head in. Mental health is considered, has such a stigma attached to it. So if you admit you've got mental health, then you should be in a nut house, or you should be on antidepressants, antipsychotics, drugs, right? Mental health, that's the far end of it.
Yeah.
That's the extreme when it's got to that. But that 0 point of just being an observer of everything that's taken place around you, rather than the reactor, the traffic lights, people that don't indicate, someone who gives you, shouts at you or questions you, someone who doesn't act quick enough at the till, at the checkout, because they've decided they're going to pay with cash or put their PIN number in rather than, just tap and go, will you?
Yeah.
You're holding me up. Yeah, that's taking another 10 seconds. Different aspects, because everyone knows they have reactions which are not really healthy for them or for those around them. Okay, that is not 0 point. So anything outside of 0 point where you're reacting is a form of mental health.
Yeah.
But mental health is a stigma. That means that no, it's not. The whole point is we're here to improve ourselves and evolve. That's what we're here for.
Yeah.
To learn. If all you're doing is blaming everyone else for your actions, that sort of thing, well, it's their fault, and what responsibility are you taking for yourself?
Yeah, and you don't change, do you?
And the massive thing from HK, which was the biggest lesson to learn, was that we are responsible for everything that we've created in our lives.
Yeah.
Everything. Now, that is such a huge thing to take on. I appreciate that.
Yeah, but people will deny that as well. They won't
of course, because there are people that have been victims in life. Do you know what I mean? But
it's a manifestation of something.
As I found out, people who have experienced victimhood, and anyone who's done HK courses or had HK sessions where they have been a victim of some dramatic stuff, that session will include going back to a past life to see what they did in the past as the perpetrator to have to experience that this time. Now, then that goes into the whole scenario of karma and all the rest of it. Karma is a very cheap way of explaining that sort of thing. What it's actually about is the universe being in balance.
Yeah.
Everything has to be in balance. And so if you've done something, then you have to experience that upon yourself to bring the universe, but your own universe back into balance, until you get to a point where you have these experiences enough to go, okay, what's going on here? Why is this happening?
Yeah.
And then you start looking at self and understanding what we are in this universe and how everything works.
Yeah.
So, it is a fascinating journey. Who needs Netflix? Do you know what I mean? When you've got your own life to look at and study. So basically what HK is, other than this stigma of mental health, everyone has things that they react to that they would probably prefer not to. That is a form of mental health, but not with the stigma attached to it.
That's right, yeah.
It's mental health. I am going to have to come up with another
phrase for it.
Because it's got such a stigma to it, like the word God. The stigma attached to the word God is it's associated with religion. Well, religion isn't God. I don't use the word God because I'm still so programmed that it just doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
But if you say spirituality or spirit, then that's conveyed as religion.
Yeah.
And it's not. Religion is a controlled construct outside of human, visible human spectrum.
But
It's controlled outside of what. So that's another whole tangent to
Yeah.
go on another time altogether. And you can see the physical application of that, where they've actually showed you, yeah, we control this.
Yeah.
It's there. It's all around you. So, in finishing, HK is a fast track way of evolving as a spiritual person,
Yeah.
improving yourself for yourself, but then has that knock-on effect of improving
Everything around you
everything
as well.
around you,
Yeah.
not just your family, not just your work, but your whole environment. You
Yeah.
will see a massive change.
Yeah, and I'll agree with that because I've obviously experienced it myself.
Yeah,
So I've seen how it's changed things in my life, and the knock-on effect of that as well
indeed.
in different areas. So
Yeah,
yeah.
good. So
Okay. Finish it there.
thank you everyone for listening. Much appreciated, and we will not let the time relapse.
No, I was going to say we'll try and get one in quicker than last time.
Well, do you know what? The more likes,
There
here
you
it
go.
goes. The more likes and the more subscriptions we get, the more often we'll do them. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
I'm happy to do them because really it's giving up an hour of time, and if I'm not having to I'm going to make these notes on this book and all the rest of it, which really was just a case of trying to convince people that might be on the fence. Don't need to do that.
Yeah.
If you're really interested, get the book.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it is absolutely packed. You will honestly wonder how ever was evolution considered.
Yeah.
Darwinism how was that ever considered a thing?
Yeah.
And you know where it came from?
Go on.
Your man Aldous Huxley. They changed in I think it was in Chicago. They had this big meet where there was all these evolutionists with creationists, and the scientists were there, and they basically Aldous Huxley, in his very clever, manipulative way, ridiculed the scientists that proved that we are part of a creation.
Yeah.
That's all it was. It was a ridicule.
Yeah.
And that ridicule grew. They manipulated that through the media and the press, etc. And so it then became, you were ridiculed if you believed in that. And it all started from that point. It's in this book.
Okay.
So,
well, if you like the podcast, as Andy said, and then that encourages us to do more.
Pass it on and get people to subscribe, because we are going places with this, and it will be great.
Yeah.
It'll be really good and interesting journey. So,
and this one will be out before you do the podcast with Althea, but we will we'll either upload the Althea podcast as well ourselves, or we'll link it under the bottom of the next one we do, because I don't think we'll be able to get another one out before you have that.
No.
But we'll try and get one out shortly after that one.
And also, if the comments want to, if you make comments on the video, like, do you know what? An hour is a bit too long. I'd prefer if you did half-hour ones. Or you said, you know what? I could quite happily listen to this for a couple of hours. I'm not saying you get that, but feedback is important so that we know, what is going to work better.
Yeah. Just lets us know which direction people are more inclined to as well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
As well as commenting like the ego comment that Andy made, and we can do a whole podcast on the ego. If you want us to delve into these little avenues, then just let us know, and we can obviously dedicate some time in a specific podcast to try and narrow down that route, can't we?
Yeah, indeed.
Cool. All right, guys. Thanks a lot.